Thank you so much for meeting us and coming to this interview today. We look forward to learning more about Usikimye and what you do regarding like gender-based violence in Kenya. So maybe before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your education, and whatever else like you feel may be relevant?
Okay, my name is Njeri Migwi. I am the co-founder and executive director of Usikimye, which is an organization that deals with gender-based violence here in Kenya. I'm also a feminist, a mother of 9, 4 cats and 5 children. Yeah, so some adopted, some, all that work. Yeah, so I'm a birth mother. I tell people I'm all mothers. I'm a birth mother, an adopted mother, and a stepmom. Yeah, 5 kids and 4 cats. And I finished my education. I did a degree in tourism management, funny. But that's not what I'm doing. I quit work sometimes on 2007, formal education. Formal working, like employment here. And then I went into business with my then husband. He had a large corporation that he was running, and we ran it with him until about 2011 when we got divorced because of domestic violence. And and then in 2019 is when we formally started Usikimye. However, between those years, I went back to school. I did interior design, and that's what I was doing. But in the meantime, I was still doing a lot of GBV. Even before we formally started Usikimye, I was running Survivors Anonymous, which I'd run for a while, which was like we were using the principles of AA, but we're using it to counsel survivors of childhood abuse that needed just, the support, the psychosocial support to be able to restart their life. So I was doing that for a very long while. And the reason I was doing this was because of the abuse I suffered. I am partially deaf due to that abuse. So yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about what I do and how I do it. On 2015, I got married again. Yeah, that's how I have all these mother stamps all over me. But yeah, it's a great thing. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. I'm an avid anime watcher, an avid gamer. I know. Wow. I like war games. They are the ones that, when I'm very angry and have all those angst and I go to Call of Duty and I shoot a few people, I feel, yeah. So, right. So basically that's about it. Okay, so as I told you, I was already running Survivors Anonymous, so people knew me for that. I was a safe space, and I'd already rescued a few women, tried to help them and things like that. Now, in 2019, I met Stella Kachina. She's my co-founder. And she actually came to she's leading to the DMs. And she was like, Gal, I would want us to talk about what you do and how we, both me and you, can see how we can synergize. She was doing something called Afro Idea. And I was doing my Survivors Anonymous, how we can synergize together and see if it's something that you could, come together and work. Because at the end of the day, the end goal was the same. Maybe we could be able to reach out to more people. And I told her, yeah, cool. So we went out, we had lunch, and we spoke about what we were each doing. And we felt like there were areas of synergy that we could come together and start. So what we started at that particular time in 2019, before we formally registered, was an online initiative. We were just talking about things. The whole reason it is called Usikimye was do not be silent. We were telling people do not be silent, because 2019 was the year when we had a young doctor called Dr. Ivy Wangeshi. She had been killed. If you may not be private to this, but she was doing her she was about to finish to become a medical doctor in Eldoret. And the boyfriend was in Thika, I think. And he drove for 7 hours carrying an axe to go kill her, which he did. And people were just making fun about the whole thing. You know, they were making memes and jokes. Oh, if you eat fair, we're going to kill you. And I was devastated. And I was like, wow, we need to change the online culture that addresses how people react towards violence, because it was horrendous. It was just the worst. You know, people had this shocker meme and they were saying the way now, if you refuse, you know, and it was just the most disgusting thing you've ever seen. And I was like, this ain't it. And so we agreed with Stella, we need to start teaching people to be more empathetic, to understand that even making those jokes are really bad towards survivors. So we started formally teaching people. So we started a page and we were telling people, hey guys, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to stop. This is how you need to react when a victim or a survivor talks to you. If you need, you know, things, psychosocial support, talk to us. So basically we were each working, and it was just an online initiative where we were telling people, do not be silent about things like that. Actually, in that year, 143 women were killed. So we were actually addressing femicide. But in 2019, December, we formalized. Yeah. On 29th of December, we said, you know what, let's register this as an organization. And then we start. And then we just start talking to people. It was always talking to people. We were not really going to take it further than that.
Yeah, just raising awareness.
Yeah, just creating awareness around that. So people knew that about us. If you had been raped, people would come and ask us questions and we'd tell them. We'd take a few people to hospitals when we had time in between. All of us were working. Fast forward, the pandemic started. That is where the whole problem started. Is that now real-time violence was happening. And people, I remember just minding my business, updating and talking to women. We had even done a march previous before that, demanding the government should address the pandemic that, I mean, the femicide that was happening to women, just as us as Usikimye, but, you know, it was not that serious. Things were just level. We had started doing marches and talking to people, educating girls, giving girls pads. Nothing's, you know, nothing as substantial as what we do. Then the pandemic started. I remember the first case we were called, a woman was completely injured and all her back, almost half her back had been, because she had been dragged across the stairs. That was now my first, you know, I'm facing real violence. And we are calling everybody to find out about shelters. And no one even seems to know what we are talking about. When we're asking about shelters, people are telling us, yeah, there's a children's home. And we're like, no, we're not looking for a children's home. We're looking for a women's shelter where we can take somebody who has been a victim of domestic violence. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? We've never heard of anything like that. I'm like, a place where women stay. We are aware there are shelters, there are battered places, you know, battered women shelters, and nobody seemed to have an idea in the whole country. We only found one battered women shelter. It was called Refugee, and it was for refugees, for children below 17. And we were shocked. And that's when we realized, Allah, all these things we tell women online, on the ground, things are different. We have to like, so Stella and I had to combine our resources immediately. We did a call online and told people, hey, we are opening a safe house. We need, you know, things, clothes and bed sheets and beds and sofa sets and whatever you can give us. That's how we opened our first safe house. It was actually just 3 rooms. We had a bedroom, a sitting room, and a kitchen, and an outside bathroom. Because that time things were thick. The pandemic had just started. We hadn't really understood how bad things would become. But at that point, there was already a need to take this woman to a safe house. So I took her to my house. The next woman, I took her to Ella's house. At some point, I had 3 women living in my house and 3 women living in Stella's house. So that's what necessitated us opening now the safe house. We had nothing, no knowledge. Everything we were doing, we were Googling online, what to do, how to run, what is needed, what is required in a safe house. We are realizing we need to have an employee and and so on. Right now, we currently have 3 safe houses, 2 for women and 1 queer. Let me just put it this way, because we had raised the awareness of us needing and requiring a safe house, and people not, and then of course the pandemic now, you know, the cases started rising, jobs that people started losing jobs, so there's a lot of unemployment. People, then there was the curfew measures, the quarantine measures, And now people were at home together and everything went berserk. And by that, I mean, we were receiving calls left, right, and center all over the country. And we were a new foundation. We didn't have the resources. We didn't have the funds. So we would run a lot of calls on our social media and ask people, we have this case. We need to go pick a woman in a certain place, or we need to go pick up a child. Basically, that's how we did it. We did a lot of online mobilization, which is still what we do, but now we do it on case by case. But that time things were just, on a day you could even have, you'd find that I was running around 3 people. So what eventually happened is I had to quit my job.
Yeah.
Because things got really, really heavy. And we had to employ a shelter mom, a shelter caretaker, and just start now running this. Stella didn't quit her work. We needed her to still work so that she could support me while I do the running around. So we sat down and decided this is what we're going to do. You're going to work, and I was going to, to do the rescues and to do the mitigation measures that were required at that point.
And during this time, so it was just you and Stella in the entire team, just you two. And yes. Is that still how it is right now?
No.
Okay.
We've grown. We are big now. We have about 12 paid staff. And a whole bunch of volunteers.
Okay.
At least over 30 volunteers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because now we do a lot. We've diversified even into what we do. We're not just responsive. We also work a lot along the prevention measures. One of the prevention measures we do is most of the cases we're getting at some point are coming from a place called Soweto in Kayole. Of course, we get cases from all over Kenya. But at that point, we're getting a lot of cases surrounding Soweto. We had a volunteer there. So these are some of the cases we deal with. So we decided, let's go to Soweto and see what is happening there and maybe set up our office there. So we set up an office in Soweto. We now even have an office. So we set up there and we started educating people around the community. We found out that there are things like sex for pads, and during the pandemic, this had really, really gone up. Because remember, your parents are not working, you're at home. And so a lot of men would take advantage of this. And we found we had a crisis in terms of teenage pregnancies. I think the last year and this year, we've had the highest number. We were among the people who are pushing for kids to go back to school because things were bad. Teenage pregnancies were up here. And then children being defiled were up here. Women being beaten up here. Everything just escalated. So we realized we can't just be responding all the time. We need to start looking at ways in which we can, de-escalate the situation. So one of the things we decided to do was to start offering sanitary pads to all the girls. Soweto is a low-income area, so even access to pads is a problem. Access to clean water is a problem. So you can imagine, pads are not at the highest, at the top tier needs that the community is looking at. And we realized this was a real big challenge for girls. We're looking at girls who are using things like cartons. We're looking at girls who are using things like papers, newspapers in this century. I mean, it's abominable. So we started talking to the community and asking them what are the real needs they have. And one of it to the girls, especially to the young girls, was pads. And we realized that men were taking advantage of these young girls. And so we started this to ensure that the pad situation is taken care of. We started now making sure that every girl in Soweto is aware that they can walk into our office for pads. And we do that a lot. We make sure that they know and they're aware, and we keep on doing that. That was one thing that we did. The other thing we did was to start a feeding program. So in a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, those 4 days we have a feeding program. We feed about 3,000 people a week. It's almost like a soup kitchen, but we give food at lunchtime, or porridge and bread over 10 o'clock. So we make sure that that also decreased the vulnerability of children, because children are very vulnerable. If I'm hungry and you're giving me food and I'm telling you, come, you give me food 3 days, the next day you find a child has been raped. And we've seen that bring down exponentially the number of cases that we were handling from that in that area.
Yeah. So I'm just curious. So during this time, like when the pandemic hit, you quit your job. It was only Stella working. So how are you able to do all this? Where are the financials? How did that work?
Again,
Yeah,
online,
yeah.
a lot of support from Kenyans in the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we do a lot of that. We've never formally gotten a grant for our work, even though our work is out there and it's very visible. We are still not yet on the limit where they start giving grants. We are still considered a young organization. However, because we amplified our work socially, what happened is that Stella maintained her job and she got another job. I think Stella has 3 jobs. One of those jobs pays to support me so that I can be able to, run the organization and able to do that. Ami, the BTS Ami?
Yeah,
BTS, the Korean.
BTS. Yeah, yeah.
They ran a fundraiser for us.
Oh wow.
Work we did, yes. So yeah, those are the kind of supports we've gotten. Find Kenyans, like they did a really good fundraiser for us. We have a friend in Canada. She also tried to do a fundraiser for us. So such things, and also us running a monthly fundraiser, you find that people have been very supportive of the work we do. The Sikh community has been very supportive in terms of giving us access to food, so that you're able to make sure that you're able to feed the people. And just, I don't know, I'm just going to tell you, we rely on the goodwill of people, honestly. We started a mobile library the other day, and right now we currently have about 400 books, all donated by people. So I have to be honest, people have really been our backbone of our support, both diaspora and even locally. Yeah.
Okay.
In the 2 years we've been running, we've managed to raise about 5 million Kenya shillings to be able to support the work we do. I don't take that for granted, because you see, we are not just a one-time charity. We are an organization that keeps on running and keeps on relying on the goodwill of people. So that's what has been so far. Yeah, access to resources, access to skilled professionals. Like, for example, once the pandemic started, we realized that people needed a lot of psychosocial support. So together with Mayor, myself and Stella and another lady, we started something called Tunariri. Tunariri was to help us create a platform, an online platform, on which we could be able to give people the support they required, because some of their support could be financial, but there's also the counseling bit. So luckily for us, we're able to bring into what are they called? WhatsApp and live chat. And we were able to give about over thousands of people, 5,000 people or so, we were able to give them online psychosocial support without having to talk to them. So what we did was to mobilize counseling psychologists, but we didn't find a lot of that in Kenya. A lot of our counseling psychologists were coming from around the world. Can you imagine that we had psychologists as far as Brazil, as far as India, because we just do it online and we told people, hey, we need help. Things are at a crisis at this time, because calls are just coming in and coming in. And it was crazy. And most of the time you feel like somebody needs immediate, just psychosocial support at that point. So just even getting people, remember, as I said, we are not funded. So we rely a lot on volunteers. And here we are, we've come into the community and we're telling people, volunteer your skills. We still do that, but now people have a greater understanding. And we keep on telling people, one of the principles we operate in is, we tell you, we need one of 3 things. You can volunteer your time, your skills, or your money, whichever one you have available. We are always asking this of people, but in order to get people to understand that you're volunteering and it's not a paid opportunity, and you're asking you to bring your skills across the table, that was not easy, because people did not, we do not come from, that kind of, people know how to go to, let's say a children's home, or visit people in the hospital. This is a whole different dimension that we are asking people, hey, come in across. So that was really hard. So just getting skilled people to volunteer their skills, that has been quite a challenge. Even now, still a challenge. We're still working towards it.
I'm just going to go back a little bit to something that you'd mentioned. I remember seeing in the news about the rising cases of teenage pregnancies and violence, but not in detail as what you're talking about. So in your opinion, how would you wish that probably the government or other big organizations should have handled the situation, or did they handle it in the way that it was supposed to?
First of all, I will always lay the blame of teenage pregnancies at the government's feet. Mm-hmm. We need to have comprehensive sexual education in these countries. Babies don't grow in trees. There has to be sex that happens somewhere, whether it is consensual or not, for there to be babies. And we're having babies, and this is wrong. There is no way we can look at this in any other way. But the government is very reluctant in rolling out comprehensive sexual education. We come in a country, as you're well aware, that has a lot of religiosity. And because of that, there's always people campaigning against comprehensive sexual education. And the government gives in to the whims of the church all the time. Because the church, I don't understand why they always feel like if kids are taught about CSC, comprehensive sexual education, they're going to, I don't know, there's a misconception that CSC is actually, I don't know whether they think kids are going to be taught pornography. And because of this, you find that children, so we have CSC, lack of, complete lack of education about sexuality, anything that pertains to that. So one, we have a generation that grows without knowing, but they have access to the internet. So they're also able to Google and do things. So that's one. Two, reluctant parents also playing into the fact that nobody wants to talk about it. So now you can imagine what kind of a demographic and kind of a gap that has been created and what has happened to fill that gap. So when you have 600,000 girls getting pregnant in 1 year, that's insane. Even if you look at it and say, let's say, successful rate of births, that's 1 million children being born to children. Mm-hmm. And it's abhorrent, honestly. And for the government to always state those figures and do nothing about it, every year we have this, you'll see, especially during the education, during the main exams, you'll always see the government say, 11,000 girls in this area were not able to sit for the exams because they're pregnant. And somebody has to mitigate. There has to be, a result-oriented solution. And the government just, if you even heard what the Minister of Education said at that particular time, you'd be so offended. So this one, I'm laying blame right across on the government feet, that we need to wake up and just start on the comprehensive sexual education agenda. It has to be put back and has to be put in education so that we can teach kids how to prevent, how to be safe, because that's the thing that teenagers need to understand. It could be consensual sex between teenagers. It could also be rape, because if it's, let's say, the border men who have also been accused a lot on preying on teenage girls, these girls need to understand what is it that needs to happen. And also the government needs to encourage, the same teenagers to go back to school. Because if you're poor and you get pregnant, high chances are you will drop out of school and never go back to school again. So that is a problem.
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, a lot of domestic violence situations have been exposed. And I am hoping that we can, one, be able to open a shelter in every county. That's one. Two, we still have a long way to go within educating this country about how domestic violence and the trauma that it still has on people and the grip it has. A lot of this rot has been exposed, as I said. For me to come and learn that FGM is still a thing is very shocking. It is still a thing. For me to still understand, I didn't know. And for me to come and understand that there's child marriages still going on in this country. There are people who are still negotiating issues of rape as a cultural practice, whereby if I rape your daughter, myself and elders, we can come together and negotiate. So there is still a lot to be done, a lot. Child prostitution, sex for parts. Just when you think that the domestic violence is not the only issue, we have a long way to go. Even just making sure that we give life skills to girls, which is a program we are running right now, especially along the lower income areas where girls do not have access to this knowledge, where girls get married as young as 10 and 12. And holding a 10-year-old, for me, giving birth is the most traumatic thing I have ever gone through. And taking a 4-day-old child to hospital, having been molested, these things broke me. And I want to tell you that these things are still happening. They may not, let's just say, the media has not shone a light on them as they should. As they should, like, this is what is happening and this is what we need to do. So the media hasn't really played their role, I feel, as they should, to just continually always talk about this and not talk about it in terms of sensationalization. We need to have more education. As I said, less of more, as much as we're responding, but you also need to talk about prevention so that people know that these things happen and what to do when these things happen. So we still have a role for Usikimye to play and to still fill in gaps, even in the post-pandemic reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, primarily we're still going to be, because gender-based violence touches on issues of human rights. However, we are going to be much more preventative, hopefully, than we are responsive. Because if we can prevent it from happening, then we have actually started winning the war. And we've done quite a lot of diversification. However, in terms of response, we do have a hotline that we run, and it's manned by 4 counseling psychologists, and it is supported by the Embassy of Sweden. So we have a 24-hour hotline, and like before, when you could call me directly, now we have a number that you can reach out to Usikimye and get. So that still helps in working towards GBV. And we also, with the same number, we're also able to provide people with counseling, so they can call in and just talk to a counselor and get the help that they need all over the country. We get cases all over the country. Secondly, as I have said, we are doing the mobile library, just keeping children busy. We are trying to keep the children as busy as possible. We are running the life skills for girls. We are doing something called Inua Jamii Bora. That is, it's a help for women, also again in Soweto, to be able to open small businesses, run small businesses, just give them support that they need to be able to facilitate and help their own children. So all those, so there's a lot still to be done in a future like this. Even today today's World Cleanup Day. So we were actually cleaning the streets along Soweto. It's always about community mobilization and just making sure that the community understands what we are doing.
Yeah, I think that's very wise. That like solving gender-based violence issues is not, you don't have to just focus on those direct issues, but also things like education and keeping them busy away from where they could be victims. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
that's really wonderful. So my next question is that the pandemic has been mentally challenging for a lot of people, and I'm sure you are no stranger to that given the stories that we've heard here. So how are some of the ways that you've been able to cope mentally with not only running Usikimye during the pandemic, but just other measures such as quarantine, curfew, and how have you just been able to keep your mental health afloat if you were able to?
In as much as I used to run Survivors Anonymous and give therapy to survivors, I did not know how much therapy I would require to do this work. I wouldn't do this work without therapy. This work is mentally challenging, mentally draining. There are days I just get home and I'm like, I'm done. That's it. Do not tell me anything about Usikimye. Nobody prepares you for the things you see. And I did not realize how important therapy is. Let me tell you, I have a session every week with my therapist. I used to see this as a white people thing. Sorry to put it that way. When the movies, somebody's going to their therapist, and I used to be like, white people. Until I realized I need to talk to a therapy. I need to have supervision. I need to have debriefing, because what happened is when we started, I never knew the importance of doing this. And there's a day I started having panic attacks, severe panic attacks. One day I can't, till today, I don't drive myself. I stopped driving because of the panic attacks I was getting. And one time I almost hit someone and I had to just stop the car, call someone. The government has a hotline and I just had to call them at that point. And I told them I'm dying. I think I'm having a heart attack, because that's how it was feeling at that point. And so they helped me with breathing exercises and they talked me down and they told me it's okay. And after that, I realized, Allah, I need to see a therapist. So I started going to see a therapist, and that has really, really helped. And the therapist now helped me starting to create boundaries around what I was doing. Is 24 hours. I was all over the country running around like a mad woman. So the therapist told me the world will still burn. And you need to start creating something, our self-care routines, and create boundaries around your time. You have to say by 7, I'm not going to pick any calls that are related to work. And I'm going home and I'm going to become maybe the mother and the wife that I'm required to be. Because at some point I was just angry. The whole world, I used to feel like I'm just angry, like, why are people doing this? I was so angry, irritable, and, and I would get home and I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was just completely, not useful at home. So because of therapy, I was able to learn how to create personal boundaries around my time, personal boundaries around my phone, and just, in fact, the therapist had actually recommended I need to have another line. That now I shut down my line and I stop, and to now stop feeling guilty about not being able to help everybody, because there's such a huge expectation when you start an organization like this. Is such a huge expectation of people that you need to save everybody, and I had to learn that I can't save everybody and not feel guilty about it. Still working on that. It's not an easy thing. I'm still working on that. And then, of course, now with that, now also to develop other interests outside of work, because my friends can tell you the whole of 2020, they never saw me. I completely lost touch because I was not available. They could call me on the phone, I wouldn't pick because I'm busy doing other things, just trying to put the organization together. So I had to now learn the limits I could do, that even though I can do everything, if the world is to burn, it will still burn. One person can't save it, but if I can save one person, it's good enough. Again, still a work in progress, but I'm doing way, way better than I was doing. So yeah, that has been very important. Just personal boundaries. I didn't know how important they were until I started this work. And not to let the work sip in. It will, but not to let it sip in as much as I had allowed it to into my personal life. You see, I know the media will say they're not responsible for this, but we need to have like a segment that educates people about GBV. I'm actually hoping, or rather I got good news on my way here. Where somebody called me and told me they're willing to put up their studio. When we started, we were doing something called Survivor Stories. And it was very good because people would relate to the survivors that we were talking to and the stories that they were telling. I want the media to be survivor-centered, not to be more this social. They can call you and tell you, that story, it's nice, but that's not what we want. We want the worst. You understand? We want that 4-day-old child who was raped. So they're looking at sensation rather than substance. If they could run an educative series where that, let's say on Wednesday, we know NTV runs a series on domestic violence or on rape or on what to do, or, there's so many. GBV is so big that you can talk to people and educate people and create awareness around these things. How about telling people that if your husband beats you, you can go and report? Many people don't. What is underreported is a larger number than what is reported. So imagine if we created programs that educated the community, especially on radio and TV, because that's a lot of what people listen to. Every week, people know that at this particular time, we log in, this is a person, or even in the morning when people are going to work and we have all these radio shows where people tune in. And just even for 10 minutes a day, create a segment that, because this is a thing, it's always going to be with us. GBV is not going to go anywhere. Just the pandemic, the numbers rose, but GBV has been with us for a very long time. The fact that you have hospitals in Kenya that are just equipped and their only work is to deal with GBV should tell you everything. We have MSF, that's Doctors Without Borders. We have Nairobi Women. Purposely, the purpose of their set aside, they have a Nairobi Women as GVRC, and it's always busy. So that tells you that we have a long way to go before we even have a cure for GBV. So if we could also talk to people using, sometimes I feel like I'm just a lone voice, just speaking about these issues. And every time we think there's nothing to speak about, there's always something, because something is always happening. And we need to create, and we need to stop looking at GBV as a taboo subject. We need to tackle it. Somebody's being beaten. It cannot be the village secret. It cannot be the town secret. It has to be, somebody has to be talking about these things so that one, people can be aware. Two, you can also create avenues for people to go to hospitals, for people to get legal aid, for people to get help. We had 169 women die, reported cases last year. This is not normal. This can't be it. We have to create narrative for you not to just report on what has happened, but also to create a responsible narrative that helps, because if the family unit is broken, then the community is broken.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, unless you have any other questions for us, those are our questions. Such insightful information and such a touching story from you. So thank you so much for joining us. And
I'm so sorry for all the delays that have happened, but I'm glad to finally be here and to support you and the projects that you're doing. What exactly are you doing, if I may ask?
Yeah, for sure. Steph, do you want to?
Yeah, so we are doing, so we both go to the University of Toronto, and they have a student engagement project, like Student Engagement Award is what it's called. Essentially, students get to do a project of their choice regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, and providing a positive outlook as much as possible. So our project is centered around telling stories of people who have been able to create some good in the community during the pandemic, either through organizations such as yourself, or people who have been able to uplift themselves and their businesses and their careers during the pandemic. So that's the point of Silver Lining. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense with the name Silver Lining. All right.
Yeah.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me. And I hope this has been helpful.
Yes, thank you.
This has been amazing.
Yes. And we wish you all the best going forward. What you did was incredible. Your story is incredible. And we are rooting for you, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Have a nice day.
You too. Cheers.
Okay. Logo. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.